Hey, and thanks for joining the Architect and Interior Design Podcast. Today I'm in the wonderful old Art Deco Paramount building in Sydney, Surrey Hills, and I'm going to be catching up with Brenton Smith, who is a director and head of interiors here at Bates Smart. I'm pretty excited to find out a bit about Bates Smart's philosophy and direction, so come and join me.
The Architect and Interior Design Show would not be possible without the support of our official partner, Studio Barnio, the architect's choice for bathware. Book a product presentation for your practice with Tony Rollins at studiobarnio.com.au.
Hey, I'm Brenton. Thanks for catching up with me. I'm a bit disappointed in the hospitality. This is water, everybody. But
we can get you gin, we can get you vodka, we can get whatever you like. Tony?
Gin and vodka, but we better wait till afterwards. What do you reckon? A gin followed by a vodka.
Perfect.
I know Bates Smart, the practice, but there's a lot I don't know about it. So maybe a potted history of Bates Smart, because I think there's about the oldest practice standing.
It's one of the oldest. It's come from, we're going back to the 1850s.
Whoa.
Yeah, so we're kind of almost 170 years plus, but it's a very old established practice. And obviously during that period, there was a lot of immigration from the UK.
Yeah.
And it was started by a gentleman called Joseph Reed, and he won the first competition for the town hall in Victoria, but also did the state library. So, what's really magical, even now when you walk around, Melbourne Central in the CBD, you could pretty much do a great tour of many of the iconic.
They are iconic
heritage buildings, which are, there are churches, there are civic buildings, there are actually even houses that kind of date back to the early Bates Smart days. So we're a practice that's has endured many different trends of architecture and interior design. Through a long period. So it's an amazing history with it, and a practice that's got great pedigree.
Yeah, and it's multidisciplinary, I guess. Extending right into urban planning and that sort of thing. So there's an overview.
Well, yeah, and look, I think I suppose the reason that we've maintained and stayed relevant is that you have to, with a practice this size, over that duration of time, you really can't just work in one particular sector. Because there are so many economical factors, social factors that influence how cities are created and how they're formed and how they evolve. So, very early on, and it's not, we're not different to other practices in that way. Very early on, we had to forge a practice that had a focus on all these different sectors, because that's the way you stay relevant. You need to be in civic buildings, you need to be in commercial buildings, you need to be in health, you need to be in hotels, you need to be in all these different categories, because what it does, it gives a business a degree of agility and flexibility to ride the waves. And that's how a business stays around for such a long period of time. But I don't think it's just even sectors. I also think it's in technology. It's also it's in how we advance and how we keep testing and trying different things, and working with clients to really make things better and improve. So so it's great to be one of the custodians in this generation, kind of moving it forward.
Custodianship. I think that is something.
Very privileged.
There's a heritage, and that heritage is being expanded in your work now, because there's some marvelous stuff happening, which is great to see. So basically, though, the practice was founded in Melbourne, but now head office in Sydney.
Yeah, and look, so the Sydney practice started about 20 years ago in Sydney. So we're about 150 in Melbourne now, about 150 in Sydney, and obviously we're now in Brisbane as well. But the Sydney practice, by comparison is quite young.
Yeah.
if you look at the timeline of Bates Smart, but it's been incredibly successful. But
Pretty big resume.
Yeah, but what I would say, it's whilst we have Sydney and Melbourne, it's still a collaboration and a collective. There's no Sydney or Melbourne. It's just Bates Smart. We all work together. We all share resource. We all work nationally and internationally. So that's the other great thing about having a practice that's a national practice, is that once again, when things are up and down, as they do in architecture, if one city's doing well, the other one's not, you can push and pull.
Yes.
So that I think has also helped with our kind of resilience over those 170 years.
Wow. Okay. So you're a director, but particular oversight of interiors.
So interiors.
Yeah, and there's, to me, not at Bates Smart, but in a lot of practices, there often seems to be a disconnect between the interiors and the exterior. I don't know whether you agree, but I seem to notice that. So tell me, what does this involve there for you?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think our standpoint is we're very much an integrated practice. So a lot of our projects, we start with a commercial building, but we have a team of interior designers working on the interior of those public spaces. We're doing seniors living, which we're doing the architecture for, but we're also doing the integrated interiors. We're doing hotels, we're doing the architecture, but we're doing integrated interiors for that. So I think it's we are very much a focus on an integrated product.
Yeah.
Which only adds, I think, is a huge benefit to our clients, but also adds strength to the overall offer. But that said, we still work in things like workplace, which runs at a different speed and a different pace.
Yeah.
And a lot of our, in the interiors team, I'd probably say it's probably about half and half integrated, half independent commissions. So we get both. We do integrated, and then we do, as I say, like a workplace where we have a lot of clients. Like Cores, for example, who we're not doing the building for, but we just finished 8,000 square metres in the 3XN building in QQT. So we still do a lot. So we have a lot of our workplace projects, which often are not necessarily integrated. So it's a bit of a mixture.
Whoa.
Yeah.
A thing that intrigues me is that I think at university, I don't think there actually is a definition of architecture. I don't think I've been able to find one. Now, I did read somewhere, there was a Spanish writer whose name I've forgotten, who defined architecture as the space between walls, which may be true and kind of cute, but leaves an awful lot out. So I'm always intrigued in the philosophy of architecture, which, as far as I can see, nobody actually teaches either. And yet you guys must have a philosophy.
Well, I think architecture is actually probably a lot broader now than it ever used to be. Once upon a time, it was probably about, someone would get an architect would get a commission to do one building, and they'd spend years doing that building and crafting it and honing it. But I don't think there was probably as much emphasis put on everything that's around that building, and the infrastructure and the placemaking and the integration of the public, the integration of the staff and the people who work in those buildings. So I think what's happened, and we're even starting to see this now, even in commercial towers. Once upon a time, for example, the lobbies of commercial towers were kind of iconic. I won't say mausoleums, but marble, iconic kind of volumes that would dwarf humans to the point where it could be somewhat like intimidating.
Yes.
Maybe that was what they wanted to do. But I think now we're moving into a time and a place where. And we're certainly seeing this a lot in even with what our workplace clients are looking for, where buildings are very much becoming almost a central hub of many different sectors. And I think so from the formality of the grand stone lobby is now, I think, somewhat kind of becoming about human activation. It's about activating with F&B. It's about deformalising some of those ground planes and almost letting the public walk through and not kind of say, you can't come in here.
Yeah.
And I think that's how cities are starting to change because, you know, from a landlord's point of view, they can see the benefit in this amalgamation of great F&B and hospitality, great third spaces, great wellness centres, and they can see the leverage points. So if I'm a tenant and I want to take a 10-year lease at 10,000 square metres, and you know the landlord says to me, well, look, by the way, you know I've got two signature restaurateurs at the ground plane in the lobby. I've got a fantastic wellness centre in the sub-basement and all the cycling facilities. I've got a third space which can enable you to have a conference for 300 to 400 people. I've got a caterer that does hotelling for the whole infrastructure of the building, and there's a hotel just across the road, so all your staff and guests internationally can come and stay at the hotel. You've literally created a self-feeding mechanism that can basically thrive with all of these different things and almost self-sustain it. It's being.
Yeah, getting away from the Albert Speer School of Architecture.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Yeah. So it's become much more. It's become much more than I think where once upon a time, as I say, the formality of just the building itself. It's a much more integrated and holistic appreciation of how people live and breathe in these spaces, and look, part of that has, I mean, this is all about a race to quality and developers wanting to provide the best for their clients. But there's a big commercial, there's a commercial drive for this, and that's about getting having buildings that are the best quality and sustaining a quality of I suppose occupant that's got to pay a premium price to be in them.
Yeah.
So it's you can't. There are fundamental commercials that go with all of this.
I think it's fascinating because what you've done is you actually revealed this practice's philosophy, and that's fantastic. I don't know that everybody has a philosophy, and because I think you're so broad based. That's why the philosophy has also got so much breadth and depth to it as well. It's really interesting stuff. Yeah. So what else is on the cards? What's going on?
Look, it's pretty exciting. I think what we've got a lot of different projects. From great commercial towers. To really cool new hotels. The hotel, I mean, it's what's been great. Look, I mean, because I work across hotels, resi, and workplace, and I love. I mean, hand on heart, my favourite's always going to be hotels and resi.
Yeah, me too. I love hotels.
I mean, it's just they're just fun. But I think what's been really interesting is. We got decimated with hotels during COVID, and of course, no owner wanted to spend any money. Why would you? No one's going to spend 20 million or 30 million doing a refurb of a hotel when no one's paying any money to come and stay at them. So what's happened is we're certainly seeing an uplift now in hospitality and F&B and hotels. That's really starting to ramp up. We've got a really exciting project. Which is going to hit the market probably in the next 12 months. Which is it's a beautiful old Victorian building. It's got 8 Japanese restaurants and a whiskey bar in it. It's got a beautiful old cartway, which is the old lane that the horse and carts used to travel down with cobblestones. And we're working with our client on that project, and that's going to be something completely unique. But the reason I mentioned that is because that's where the confidence is back.
Yes.
And if you'd said to me 2 years ago someone wants to spend this amount of money on doing 6 Japanese restaurants in a beautiful Victorian building in Sydney, fallen off the back of your chair because it wouldn't have been there. So there's certainly a degree of confidence that's come back to the market. We've got some great luxury residential projects. We've just finished Cause, as I mentioned, which is a beautiful fit out.
Yeah.
We're working with, we're doing a lot of work with Toga Central, which is a fantastic project.
Yeah, they're good people, and
Yeah,
that's a good looking building.
Yeah,
I like that one.
Yeah, and that's look. I think for me that's. Look, I love old architecture. I love working with old buildings, and and interestingly enough, a lot of our product in Melbourne and Sydney is often heritage tower integration, and the Parcel Post building in Central is a beautiful old building designed by a gentleman called Vernon, who was a government architect in the early 1910, and that building is...
It's a handsome building.
It's a handsome building. It's a beautiful... I'm probably going to digress here, but it's interesting because the building was... That building was built when... it was Edwardian, but what was happening is we were coming out of a residential period of architecture in the late 1800s into the early 1900s, and the building... what was happening is that architects were actually having to take elements from residential architecture and translate that into a commercial building. And that's how some of these early buildings evolved. They're actually an extension of the vernacular of Edwardian or whatever it might have been. And then they started to embellish that into more commercial type buildings.
Yeah.
So the Parcel Post building is a handsome building, and it's interesting because all the money at the time was spent on the outside of the building, and the interior was basically just left like a shell because they ran out of money. They didn't have a lot of money. So it's a building that's got a great story and a really interesting history, and where that's going to become a hotel. So we've got a hotel going into that beautiful old heritage component at the base.
Yeah.
And then we've got commercial tower, and there's an interplay of hotel and commercial floor plates. So, and that's another great example. That's another great example of where I started with this conversation about, you said what's architecture about? Well, that's about an environment where you can come and sleep, you can come and eat, you can come and collaborate, you can come and socialise, you can come and work. So you've literally in the one precinct, everything is there and everything is at your fingertips, and that is now. And I suppose term it as kind of city making, but it's city making. I think for us is when people talk about city making, it's very easy just to think about the scale.
Yeah.
And how big it is. But I think city making is as much about the intimacy of the interior spaces and the connection of all these different sectors coming together.
I think the building is going to add a great deal to that whole central district. Absolutely, it's going to central from just being a transport hub to being a place. Yeah. And I love looking at the renderings, the fact that the new build is so respecting of the old building as well. It actually doesn't overpower it. No. It's really very, very cunning. It's looking very good. I'm looking forward to seeing it happening.
And I think we're really lucky in Sydney. We've got I think we've got a good City of Sydney design process that enables us to respectfully keep our heritage buildings and make sure that whatever comes to the market has a presence and is of best in class. And I think that's really important for the City of Sydney, because if you look at all our beautiful old buildings, there's a lot of them that you want to make sure.
There's some really good stuff. Some really good stuff.
Yeah.
It's funny talking about the Parcel building. I'm going to digress here. There's a building in Berlin that, well, it's destroyed, but was extraordinary. Are you familiar with the Building Academy by Schinkel?
Yes.
Oh, that's a bloody masterpiece from about 1830. Yes. A shame it's gone, although I think they're going to rebuild it. Yeah. But that is just like, it's 100 years ahead of its time. Yeah. An extraordinary thing. Yeah, I love his work. Yeah. It always amazes me. Yeah. Very, very cunning. Well,
no, look, I think it's interesting. I think it's always great to see what's kind of happening internationally with kind of architecture and where it's going. But I think what's actually there was a strong trend, and this is kind of sort of a slight deviation from what you were kind of talking about. I think there was a strong trend there for a while where, you know, it was all about international architects and, you know, coming to Sydney, and, you know, they had to, you know, every developer wanted an international architect. Now, I think what's definitely becoming more and more relevant is, I think we're kind of out of that phase now.
I certainly hope so.
I feel like there's, you know, the quality and the design output of our product is you know, best in class.
It's as good as it gets. I couldn't agree more.
So I think you know, I think whilst it was a fashionable trend for a while, you know, I think that there's a realisation that the skill and talent that when it comes to architecture and interior design within Australia is some of the best in the world. Look, and I've done it. You know, I spent 15 years of my life before Bates Smart working in London. And if I look at things like, you know, even kind of interior design from a workplace standpoint, you know, we're miles ahead by comparison to what I'd say, you know, the UK and New York, just in terms of design, I suppose design delivery and, you know, and product and crafting spaces for our clients. And even in workplace strategy, you know, just in terms of how we work here. So I think we often lead. I think we often lead in some of these sectors, which is.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at architecture on a daily basis, one way or the other, here and overseas. It's a first of the morning thing with a couple of espressos to see what's going on somewhere else, but. I agree. I think the stuff here is as good as it gets. But then how the hell do we get maybe more of an export industry going? I know we're expanding and people are working overseas, but we've got so much to offer the rest of the planet. What's necessary to do that?
It's hard because everyone forgets about Australia. No one. And look, I've got to be honest with you. Like I said, having lived in London for so many years and having friends all around the world, we're a long way away from anywhere, and it's sad as it is, you know, it is, but unfortunately, it's just one of the. I think it's one of those things. We often lose good staff to go out, but I think now particularly with technology, I think we're certainly having opportunities that are definitely more kind of global. I think you know, we've got a lot of kind of international clients that we work that have got offices in, you know, the UK, the US, and I think there is that opportunity where we are certainly kind of collaborating with more people internationally. You know, I'm just as likely to talk to a lighting designer in the UK. In fact, you know, about a potential job as I am someone just around the corner. So I think that, you know, and I think, you know, COVID obviously helped that as well, because all of a sudden everyone just got used to being on Teams, and, you know, so I think it's certainly becoming. I think the collaboration, and that's another part that we really love doing. We really love working with. I mean, just going back to that Japanese precinct that I was talking about, you know, we're working with Ongarato on that, and so we really love working with people who can. A lot of these projects are about. They're about the best team coming together to form and create something that's going to be totally unique and something that's totally different. And I think that the danger is if you don't collaborate, you don't work with others, you end up pushing out the same product over and over again. So I think our view is that the more diversity we have in kind of collaboration, the more diverse views. You still have to have a singularly good idea.
Yeah,
it's not just a free for all. You know, you've still got to have an idea. But I think that overlay of, you know, working with craftsmen, working with, you know, great upholsterers, working with great lighting designers, working with all these different types of people. To craft something that's totally different, totally unique, and thinking outside of the box. You know, doing something where people are going to walk into it and remember, and they're going to go away and they're going to talk to their friends about it. When it's really easy. Mediocrity is really easy because people just walk in, it's vanilla, and they don't have a view on it, and that's base level, that's pretty easy. But I think when you can get people to interface with the product, when you can get people to interface with the space, and they kind of go and they tell their friends about it, it could be a simple thing like, God, you've got to go and check out the powder room, but you know what I mean. Like it's things like that. It's things like that start to make things kind of interesting and unique, and because a lot of the time we sweat about a lot of this. Unfortunately, a lot of the public probably just miss it. You know what I mean? So we all look at it. We all look at it in kind of granular detail, and we kind of obsess over it. And at the end of the day, people kind of walk into this space. Oh yeah, but I think the more you can push, the more you can create. The more you can kind of create a narrative where people are genuinely kind of go stop, and they almost pause at the threshold, and they kind of can't figure it out. But you've kind of caught them, and I think that's personally what I'm interested in. I think that's what we like doing. It's that moment where you can take someone to another point, or you can tell a story. You can craft a story, like the hotel I was talking about at Toga Central.
Yeah.
There's a narrative with this space that arcs back to the parcel post building. It might not be so obvious, but when the concierge or the hotel manager, puts something in a little box in the parcel post and puts a little key and says, "Welcome to our hotel," and you get a little key and you open it up and you get a little gift.
Yeah.
You're already interfacing with this idea of what the building used to be. So you're already telling a story, and you've already started to create this moment where the guest goes, "That's pretty interesting. Now I know what the building was about."
Yeah.
And that's cool. So it's not just about the heritage of the building, but it's also about what was its past use.
I love this because this is really, I think, what it comes down to ultimately, and you've really nailed it, is the interaction with people.
Yeah.
That's what architecture is about. Sometimes for worse, but at its best, a good interaction and something uplifting and stimulating.
Yeah.
And you guys have got a lot of that.
Yeah. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. I think maybe it's time for a gin. What do you reckon?
I'm all for it.
How about a bit of hospitality here? All right. Thank you, Brenton.
Thanks
very much.
Thank you.